Hey people, welcome back to the channel. This is a story in which Madara is Naruto's grandfather. He implanted his and Hashirama's cells into Naruto and trained him, which made him extremely strong. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, leave a comment if you want to suggest fanfic. Check the description for credits and support the creator of the story. So let us begin. Chapter 23. If he attempted to save him, he too would be caught in the wave of those intense flames. The jutsu Naruto had released was not normal. It was beyond any fire jutsu he had seen. Its flames were so hot that he could feel them smothering his skin even when he was a bit of a distance away from them. Right now, he could only curse his luck. He was not expecting the brat to throw a big jutsu like that. But he knew that it would take more than that to kill Hidan. The said man was consumed by the majestic flames that covered a wide distance. His pitiful screams and curses could be heard for a moment before they finally died down, but the flames still continued to burn. Naruto simply stood still as he waited. The debris and flames finally died down and Hidan was revealed. He was pure black with burns all over his body. His mouth was wide open and eyes wide. Perhaps it had been because of the pain caused by the intense flames. Those majestic flames could turn anyone into ash. The pain must have been too much for him to handle. If those flames could turn someone into flesh, how much pain did they inflict to the foul-mouthed shinobi? It was obvious that a part of his outer skin had been burned beyond repair. He was left naked with his scythe on the ground after having let it go. He could not have continued holding it after it had caught the flames. It had been like heat itself. It would have burned through his skin should he have continued holding it. His legs were shaking, but he was still alive, very much alive, despite his pitiful condition. Kikuzu cursed. He did not think that those flames would do that damage to Hidan. But he was not dead. He just was not sure if he could continue to fight in that state. He was brought out of his thoughts when Naruto started to charge towards Hidan with his blade in hand. Shit, he cursed and moved to intercept the blonde before he could reach his foul-mouthed partner. He appeared in front of the blonde, but before he could do anything, someone else appeared. You are in the way, Sasuke said with his Sharingan blazing dimly. He swung his right foot in the air and it connected with Kakuzu's face. The man had not been expecting to suddenly appear. The kick sent the S-rank criminal flying away from Naruto. This cleared the way for Naruto to continue with his match towards Hidan. How impatient, Naruto thought. The only reason Sasuke felt the need to get involved was because he wanted him to finish things quickly. If they finished things quickly, they could go after Itachi before he comes to them. Naruto shook his head. He had told his fellow Uchiha that Itachi would come to them. I guess it can't be helped, he thought. Amaterasu, the jet black flames ignited around Hidan. At that time, he seemed to have recovered from his earlier pain as his mouth was no longer gaping. Naruto also heard a curse from the man as the flames ignited on the man. There were no flames then that burned that this one. Amaterasu was the strongest Kaden jutsu. And so, it was another torture for the Akatsuki member. Naruto did not care how much pain the man felt. If possible, he would make him feel a lot more pain than he was already feeling. Naruto moved quickly towards Hidan. Kikuzu sensed what was going to happen. Hidan, look out. Before Hidan could even take note of those words, Naruto's blade had already separated his head from his neck. Hidan's head fell on the ground along with his body. The flames still continued to burn while Hidan released pained curses. The blonde ignored them though. Naruto looked at Sasuke. Throw me a kunai, he said. The Uchiha was still standing, guarding Kikuzu so that he could not make a move to interrupt his little workout with Hidan. Sasuke threw a kunai at Naruto without a word said. The blonde then caught it and drove it through Hidan's jaw. It was a brutal act, but none of the man cringed. This should keep him quiet, Naruto said before kicking Hidan's head away from him. He kicked it a distance away from the clearing. Someone would find him some other day. That is unless Zetsu finds the head and consumes it. No, that was impossible. Forgetting that all, the black flames would consume it slowly. Naruto then turned to face Kikuzu. He walked away from the rest of Hidan's body. He looked the other way as Zetsu spoke. You could have used Tsukuyomi the first time he looked into your eyes. Or you use Amaterasu from the beginning, he paused for a moment grinning. If I did not know any better, I would say that you did not do it because you wanted to test how long his body would last after what you put it through. But you don't know me better. So I had other reasons of prolonging this little play, Naruto said walking towards Kakuzu, his next opponent. Sasuke seeing that Naruto was done with Hidan, jumped away from the way. The blonde was now going to deal with Kakuzu, all he could do was watch and wish for him to finish it quickly. He wanted this done quickly so he could go after his brother and deal with him. If he knew where the man was, he would have left already instead of waiting for Naruto. But he knew that even if he begged, Naruto would not tell him where Itachi was. Kakuzu still had Yugito with him, but things were not looking any better for him. 2 Sharingan users were a bit too much, even though it seemed that only one wanted to fight. But it is obvious that the other would intervene at any moment should there be a need for that. He could not run now. He could never make it away from the two. Naruto was fast, and so was Sasuke. He just had to stand and fight. But he could not fight while protecting Yugito. He cursed. He was in a tight spot. Now then, Naruto stated looking straight at Kakuzu. It is time for the main dance, he said. There was blood dripping down on his footwear. He held out his right hand and allowed the blood to fall on his hand, it was his own blood. There was no mistake about it. And it was coming from his mouth. He had not fought for that long. Looking at his blood, his vision was a little blurry. But he could see, just not the way he normally sees things. Perhaps it was because of his use of an S-rank jutsu. His body always acted that way whenever he used an S-rank jutsu. Shit. Zetsu cursed silently. He did not think that Naruto's body would be giving up at this time. The blonde had said that his problem was unpredictable. Well, at least Naruto was still standing. He would have to finish things off quickly with Kakuzu before using more chakra than he has already. If he could do that, it would not create a problem that would need to be solved quickly. Kakuzu smiled as he saw Naruto bleeding from his mouth. He does not know what actually happened to him. But it looks like that idiot managed to do some damage after all. He did not actually see what happened, but it was to his advantage that the blonde seemed hurt. Still looking straight at the blonde's face, he could have frowned. It was just blank, like he was not worried about anything. Since when was it healthy for someone to bleed from their mouth? Bleeding from the mouth meant that one was hurt internally. That was never a good thing. But yet the blonde did not look at all concerned about his health. Perhaps it was nothing serious. Naruto wiped the blood off his mouth. But it still continued to leak out, forcing him to spit it out. Surprisingly, his body was not at all in that much of pain. He was feeling a slight headache. But it did not seem to be anything serious. He could still go on with this dance. His body had not yet given up on him. It still wanted to continue serving him. He would make good use of it. But this was not necessarily the end. It just meant that his body was telling him that his medicine was struggling to hold off the virus inside his body. It mattered not anyway. He could have it fixed. He looked at Kakuzu with his impassive expression kept. Put the woman down so we can begin with this dance. I will not move after her, neither will those who I am with. That is until each of your hearts are no longer okay, Naruto stated, loud enough for Kakuzu to hear him. The man scoffed. I don't see shinobi keeping their word. I have lived long enough know that shinobi are liars. I have lived so far with this principle, never take the word of a shinobi, he stated. But I don't have much of a choice. If I run, you will eventually catch me. If I stay and fight, there is a good chance that I can kill both of you brats and deliver the Jinchuriki. Well, since you are a Jinchuriki, I am not supposed to kill you. Do you think you can defeat me? Naruto asked quietly, looking straight at the man who has been alive for many years. He has been alive ever since the days of Madara and Hashirama. Those were many years, and yet the man was alive and well. That Sharingan might prove to be a nuisance, but, he trailed off when he saw Naruto raise his hand. Yugito there managed to switch off the lights in 2 of your hearts. That leaves you with 3 hearts, correct? Zetsu had observed everything that had happened during the capturing of Yugito and had informed him of it. He wanted the man to know that he already knew of his condition so not to give him false hope. He could have hope with his own sheer arrogance. Kakuzu's eyes widened slightly at hearing the blonde's words. How could he have known that? He had not even got the chance to replace the hearts he lost during the fight with the Two-Tails Jinchuriki. After the battle, he and Hidan had only chosen to return to base because they were told not to waste time upon getting hold of their target. He was not expecting something like this to happen. This also meant that the blonde knew of his ability. It was not good at all. How do you know that? He asked out of curiosity other than anything else. I have my eyes everywhere, Naruto replied. Now put the woman down so we can begin. We have spoken enough. I might lose my patience and lay waste to this ground. Kakuzu did not have any choice at all. Hidan was incapacitated for now. He could not get his head and try to sew him back together. There were also the black flames that were consuming his body. Those were not normal flames, and if they continued like that, there would be nothing left of Hidan's body. So all in all, his partner was dead. Those black flames could not be extinguished. Once you were caught in them, it was all over unless you cut that part of your body off. Finally giving in, Kakuzu disappeared from his spot to a distance away. He placed Yugito's unconscious body on the ground. If he was going to leave with her, then he would have to get through the two Sharingan users first. It was a bothersome task, but he would have to endure. Another blur and Kakuzu was back close to Naruto. The blonde Uchiha did not say anything. He simply disappeared in a burst of speed. The speed was surprisingly fast. Sasuke had his Sharingan activated, keeping track. He could never forget, Naruto was extremely fast even when they were genins. He could go with Kakashi in a taijutsu battle, and at that time, he was not even using his Sharingan, he was merely using pure taijutsu. So the speed Naruto showcased was not surprise to him, he had seen something like it before. He too was pretty fast. But Naruto was faster. It was because from young age Naruto had trained physically to increase his speed. He was only obsessed with ninjutsu and taijutsu. Kakuzu got into a stance, as Naruto sped towards him. He held out both his hands together, readying himself for anything the blonde might throw at him. His opponent appeared in front of him with his right fist poised to hit his face. He saw it all the way and moved faster, helped by his experience in battle, to dodge the punch aimed at his head. He felt the wind pass with the fist as it missed its target. He felt relieved that it did not hit him. Had it done that, he would have been sent flying away. Naruto did not stop with one punch only. He swung his left hand attempting a left hook at the Akatsuki member. This time, Kakuzu did not dodge the punch, he simply blocked it with his right hand. He then attempted to headbutt the blonde, but Naruto leaned back to avoid the attempt to smack him on the head. He stood in a position that would need one to be flexible. His position seemed to be what Kakuzu wanted as the man quickly spun around and raised his right foot. He sent it crashing towards Naruto. The back of his foot was going straight at the blonde's chest. Still in his bended position, Naruto held out both his hands to catch Kakuzu's kick. Once he caught it, he seemed that he was losing his balance. But he did not let go of Kakuzu's leg. While on the momentum of going down because of the force of Kakuzu's attempted kick, Naruto swiftly positioned his feet to allow him to turn around along with his opponent. He managed to drag the man along with him. This of course made it easy for him to spin around. Kakuzu had not been expecting the blonde to actually have the power to do something like this. Naruto released him and he flew away backwards. Once the momentum no longer carried him, he got his balance and flipped once before landing gracefully on the ground. He was forced into defense again as Naruto appeared spinning in front of him. The blonde attempted a spinning kick that would hit his temple, but Kakuzu was far more experienced for something like that to hit him. He brought out both his hands, attempted to block the kick, a mistake on his part. He was underestimating Naruto's physical prowess. Many people did that, but Naruto's body had been trained physically from a young age. His younger days were spent being taught taijutsu before he got to ninjutsu. The kick had much more power than Kakuzu had anticipated, hence he was pushed back and caused to lose his balance. He was like falling down with his back, but Naruto reacted quicker and got down to the ground. He spun around and attempted to leg sweep. But when his foot hit Kakuzu, it felt like he had hit a rock, hence the standstill. The kick colliding with Kakuzu's feet caused the ground under the man's feet to shatter. Naruto had not been expecting something like that to occur. He was forced into defense when Kakuzu got his balance and went down towards him. The blonde was still on the ground. He drove his right hand towards Naruto's gut. He had a grin on his face thinking that he had got him. But Naruto was not out, yet, he managed to form a hasty defense with his hands. With nothing to balance himself with, and along with Kakuzu's punch, Naruto was forced to hit the ground with his back. The Akatsuki member attempted to take advantage of it by jumping into midair. He then fell down attempting to stomp on Naruto with both his feel. But Naruto was not about to be hit, he quickly grabbed his gunbai and placed it in front of him. So when Kakuzu's feet looked to hit him, they hit his gunbai shielding him from any damage. But still, the force of the attack compelled his body to burrow into the ground, but without any injuries nonetheless. Kakuzu jumped away from Naruto when he noticed that he was dangerously close to being caught in a genjutsu as the blonde's eyes almost locked with his. It was a dangerous thing to stare into the Sharingan in a battle. I should be careful next time, he thought. Naruto got up and dusted his armor before placing his gunbai on his back again. I see, you hardened your skin just when I was about to make contact with you. That is why you stood your ground and were able to get the advantage for a moment, the blonde stated looking straight at Kakuzu. You are highly observant for a brat, the man stated with a small smile. So the rumors are quite true about you. Your taijutsu is impressive. I thought by now I would have landed a meaningful hit, the man seemed to sigh at his words. He then looked at Sasuke was watching along with Zetsu. It did not seem like he was not going to get involved anytime soon. So far the blonde was handling himself well and had already incapacitated Hidan. Well, the man was an idiot and would have probably held him back anyway. But in a case like this, his immortality was truly useful. He had 3 hearts left and potentially 3 enemies to fight. This was not good at all. Don't worry about them. Focus on me or you might lose a heart easily, Naruto stated charging towards the Akatsuki member. Kakuzu cursed again. He was left with the earth, water and lightning hearts. The other 2 had been destroyed by Yugito after she had transformed into the 2 tails. The blonde was reminding him each time that he had 3 hearts left. Why could he not just keep his mouth shut and allow him to focus on the battle? The man got ready for Naruto as he neared him. The blonde reached him within seconds and threw his right punch straight at him. Seeing the punch, Kakuzu brought out both his hands to form a shield to block the punch. Naruto's powerful punch caught up with his defense. Damn, he really does hit hard, Kakuzu thought silently. There was much more power behind Naruto's strikes. He could have never thought that the blonde could produce that much power. Well, they had been warned by Tobi about the blonde. Naruto, seeing that his attempt for a punch his opponent was blocked, he spun around and attempted to kick him on his temple. But Kakuzu ducked under the kick, dodging it. He ducked under by quickly getting on his knees. Since Naruto was still carried by the momentum of his attempted kick, he reacted quickly in trying to gut the blonde, but Naruto was even quicker. He caught the punch with his left hand, he barely held it though. To compensate for this, he held a single hand seal as if he was preparing to release a jutsu at a close range. Kakuzu widened his eyes knowing that should Naruto release a jutsu, he would be caught within its range. He quickly leapt away from the blonde, so to make a distance between them. He was surprised when Naruto did nothing. I was not going to release a jutsu, Naruto said, confirming Kakuzu's thoughts. I just wanted to see if you were brave enough to take a jutsu head and you were dangerously close to me. Sasuke's sweat dropped at this. Naruto's right hand was free, if he wanted Kakuzu to go away from him, he could have just punched him. He had the speed and reflexes to achieve that feat. And who would take a jutsu head on if they could avoid it? A jutsu could kill. Standing up to take it would be like standing in the path of a spear. The thing was sharp and when thrown like a projectile, it could pierce through your flesh, and probably kill you if it does not wound you fatally. Kakuzu could not actually believe he fell for a cheap trick like that. But not many shinobi did tricks like that. He did not think that the blonde could do such a thing. But in all truth, he was very close to the blonde. A single mistake and he would have gotten a hit on the blonde. Naruto knew that, probably why he did the trick to get him away. Despite it being a cheap trick, it did its job. Kakuzu did not want to throw in his masks at this time, he wanted to preserve them. He did not want any of them destroyed while he was still had another Uchiha to go through. But Naruto was the bigger threat. As far as intel in Akatsuki there was, Sasuke did not have the Mangekyo Sharingan. All logic pointed that Naruto was the dangerous one. So he was sort of glad he was going through the blonde first. After that, he could then go after Sasuke. The other one seemed to be weak. But you could never know. I think it's your turn to dance for me, Naruto said, inviting Kakuzu to attack him. He had been the one to engage their previous encounters, so it was now his opponent's turn to come at him. Naruto, hurry it up. Sasuke said rather loudly. His Sharingan was still activated. He wanted the blonde to hurry it and finish his fight. But the blonde did not seem to be in a hurry for anything. If anything, he seemed to like savoring the battle. He did not rush things, instead, he took things slowly. Naruto looked at Sasuke shaking his head. Don't rush me, child, Naruto stated sternly. It was the first time he had ever called Sasuke a child. But he was acting like one, hence he called him one. By the look the Uchiha gave him, Naruto knew Sasuke was not listening to him. Again, he shook his head. What an impatient child, hurrying things. Kikuzu decided to take advantage of the fact that Naruto had taken his eyes off him. It was a basic shinobi rule, never take your eyes of your opponent. But Naruto had done just that. He would use the chance to get an upper hand on the battle which seems to be now on even ground. He rushed towards Naruto with a kunai in hand. He held a weapon firmly with his right hand. Naruto turned around to face the incoming Kikuzu. The man was coming pretty fast towards him, but he still had his Sharingan and very good reflexes. He quickly brought out his blade and held it firmly in front of him. He parried Kakuzu's kunai with the sword of Kusanagi. Kikuzu attempted to pierce Naruto again with the kunai after it was being blocked. He tried 2 times again, but each time Naruto blocked his attempts. Getting tired of it, Naruto then swung his blade towards his opponent. Kikuzu tried blocking the swing with his kunai, but Naruto's blade cut through it. The sword never slowed down as it came towards his head. He managed to move back slightly to avoid being cut across his face. After that, he jumped back to create some space between him and the blonde. You are an old man. You should know that you cannot bring a knife in a sword fight, Naruto stated, giving the Akatsuki member a bit of a lesson. Kikuzu seemed to shrug in response. He was not going to take lessons from the blonde. It was also not the right time to respond to such a thing. It was still amusing that the blonde just called a kunai a knife though. But he was not going to show the amusing part of Naruto's words. He still had to deliver Yugito to the leader to have her biju extracted from her. It was good that neither of Naruto's companions had seemed to move for her. In fact, none had even looked at her. It was like they did not even care about her. So he felt obliged to question. You don't seem to be too bothered by the Jinchuriki. Your eyes have never been at her, or you perhaps not even concerned for her. If not concerned, you would request that we postpone this little party because you can't dance freely. Is that not so? Naruto stated knowing that. The man would suggest something like that. They have only been doing warm-ups only. Kikuzu remained silent for a moment, but before he could respond. No, that will not happen. You are not leaving this place. Perhaps, I might even get a chance to test my new jutsu with you, you make quite a fine specimen. Kikuzu did not like being referred to as a specimen. That was damning to being called something like that. But he was experienced in this kind of things. He would not lose his cool over the words of his opponent. It did not look like the blonde had said those words just to rile him up though. It looked like he was just expressing his thoughts. He seemed to do that very much often. Never mind that, he had to take the blonde down. It is time to get this dance to the main floor, wouldn't you say, Kikuzu? Naruto stated as his orange Susanoo came to life for a moment. But it quickly disappeared again as it appeared. The blonde stayed impassive as if he had just deactivated it. He seemed not to be concerned about it. Kikuzu did not pay much mind to it. He lunged towards Naruto in great speed trying to engage the blonde in another taijutsu battle. As soon as he reached the blonde, he swung his right foot towards the blonde. With as much power as he could, Naruto did the same and the 2 kicks collided in midair. They held each other on a standstill as they attempted to dominate the other. Naruto was first to retrieve his leg back, followed soon by his opponent. After that, they exchanged a few blows, but neither got any hit on the opponent. The battle lasted for a short period of time before Kikuzu leapt away from the blonde. He wanted to increase the numbers. He just hoped that his mask did the job for him. It would be a tragedy if he lost another heart without delivering much damage to the blonde while there were still 2 more enemies to kill before delivering his catch to the leader. From his back, a black being with a mask came out. He released Sweeten mask. The mask had his water release heart. The mask disappeared in a black blur. But Naruto seemed not to mind it. In fact, he only narrowed his eyes at it once, before looking back at him. Kakuzu took a round kunai before throwing it towards Naruto. He did hand seals, ninpu, kunai kage bunshin no jutsu, he yelled as the kunai multiplied in numbers. They became a lot more and rushed towards Naruto looking to pierce through his armor. Diversion, Naruto thought, gripping his gunbai. Well then, I should go with it and see what is planned. He wanted to use a barrier to block the projectiles, but his eyes noticed something with the kunai. They had explosives in them. He decided to change tactics and swung the gunbai in front of him. It released a powerful gust of wind that sped towards the kunai. Just as the kunai were about to hit with the gusts of wind released by Naruto, the explosive tags ignited and started a chain of explosion. Naruto jumped back slightly to avoid being caught within the explosion. The sight of the explosion would have been beautiful if it was his Susanoo making the fireworks. The level of fireworks the explosive tags had made was not enough to satisfy him. He could make explosives that could shake the very ground they stood in. He was quickly forced to turn around as a water gun was flying towards him. Since he was holding his gunbai, he decided to make use of it. The water gun drew closer to him and was about to collide with him. He held his gunbai in front of him. Gunbai barrier, he uttered as he channeled chakra throughout the weapon. An orange barrier formed in front of him, shielding him from the water jutsu flying towards him. He was not given time to settle though. Kakuzu came from behind him quickly. His barrier only protected him from the front, not from behind. He guessed that was what the man had been planning to do. If he bring his gunbai to his back and stop the barrier, the water jutsu would hit him. But if he holds on to his barrier, Kakuzu would hit him hard. Either way he was screwed. But, I am a little hot, I guess I can let the water cool me down, he thought. He swiftly dropped his barrier and spun around with his gunbai to block a flying kick from his opponent. The mask increased the pressure on the water bullet, no perhaps did another jutsu. The water increased speed and power. They hit Naruto on his back hard and sent him flying away before Kakuzu could kick him. When the water stopped carrying him, Naruto flipped several times before hitting the ground with his feet. I got a little bit excited about the fireworks and forgot about your strategy, Naruto stated, putting back his gunbai on its resting place. Sasuke shook his head. Naruto was fooling around, they would not go to Itachi soon. He sighed, perhaps he was being impatient. Naruto wanted to have some fun, it was best to allow him to enjoy himself as much as he could. It looked like there was also nothing he could do to get the blonde to hurry things with his dance with Kakuzu. Kakuzu refused to comment. Both he and his mask charged towards Naruto. They would tag team now and see how the blonde would do against two. So far, he had fared well against one, it was now best to see how he would fare against two. This would also give him the advantage he would need to land a meaningful hit at the blonde. His last water jutsu seemed to have been just shrugged off like it was nothing. It did nothing but shower the blonde. Seeing the two coming, Naruto held a hand seal. He gathered chakra before releasing his jutsu. Kaiten, Ryuan Huka no Jutsu, he said before releasing fire dragon heads that charged towards Kakuzu. He was targeting the real thing instead of the mask. Kakuzu interested him more than the mask. Seeing that he could not dodge the jutsu, Kakuzu stopped on his tracks and went through hand seals before slamming them to the ground. Doten, Doryuaheki no Jutsu, he yelled as a wall sprouted off from the ground and surrounded him. Naruto's Kaiten jutsu hit his wall but failed to prevail. His wall stood still after the assault. He was just glad that Naruto had not thrown a stronger jutsu. If he had done that, his defense would not have held up. Naruto was forced to jump away from his sport as the mask fired a water jutsu towards him. The jutsu was a small water dragon. It was not able to make a bigger one for the lack of a water source. After dodging the water dragon, the blonde landed a few feet away from the path of the jutsu. He then went through his own hand seals. Kaiten, Ryuka no Jutsu, he said, releasing some intense flames that roared towards the mask. The mask then released its own jutsu to stop Naruto's own. It released a large stream of water from its mouth. The water then collided with Naruto's breath of flames. The blonde did not let go of his jutsu, he still kept it trying to see which would prevail. Kakuzu was right on his tail while still on that. He appeared sideways near him and kicked him. Naruto had been unable to react quickly to the kick because his attention was somewhere else. The kick sent him flying away, but he quickly recovered and flipped several times before landing on the ground. Just then, he was forced to bring out his hands to block a kick from Kakuzu. His attempt was not powerful enough to break through his defense. Kakuzu tried again to kick Naruto, but the blonde blocked his attempt. Kakuzu witnessed something with the blonde. He was bleeding from his mouth again. That could not have been caused by his kick, could it? He jumped away from the blonde, allowing his mask to attack the blonde. The mask came right from behind in an attempt to hit him. Naruto, growing tired of it, he spun around swiftly and his gunbai in hand. The mask was not expecting him to react so quickly. He batted the mask away from him with the face of his gunbai. He shook his head for a moment. It was giving him some troubles, but it was nothing he could not handle. He strapped it again, on his back. Without pausing to do anything, he rushed towards the mask. While on the way, he went through hand seals, futon, Furyuden no Jutsu, he said, releasing a glaring dragon that charged towards the mask. The target then attempted to speed away for the path of the jutsu to avoid being hit. But Naruto controlled his jutsu well and it continued to move towards the mask. On the way it hit some trees, chopping them down, but it never stopped on its path to devour the target. Kakuzu realized that even if his mask did a water dragon, it would not be enough to stop the water dragon. Naruto's wind was strong, he could feel it. He had no choice but to intervene. He was not going to lose his mask that cheaply. He dashed towards Naruto, forming a set of hand seals. Raiden, Jion, he yelled with his mouth wide open. He shot a laser beam of electricity towards the blonde, was still occupied with controlling his wind jutsu. Naruto narrowed his eyes at Kakuzu without losing focus on his wind jutsu. False darkness was really fast and often made it difficult for one to dodge. But it was not impossible. He let go of his jutsu and jumped up before flipping while still in flight. When he was about to land on the ground, Kakuzu was right at him. The man had not stopped charging at him after releasing his lightning jutsu. He was able to get to the blonde before he could balance himself correctly. Kakuzu delivered a hard kick to the gut on the blonde. Naruto had thought the kick would not do anything damage to him because of his armor. But he was proved wrong when he actually felt the hit. It hurt really bad and forced more blood out of his mouth. The attacker had a smirk on his face. It appears that he had gotten him. He had hardened his body before attacking, knowing that a normal kick would not do much damage because of the armor the blonde was wearing. With that, he had to improvise. Hardening his body would give him much more power, but also slow him down. But that was not a problem because of Naruto's position. While the blonde was still dazed from his kick, he spun around and delivered another kick to the blonde on the temple. Naruto winced at the hit. His head was already giving him troubles. The kick picked up Naruto from the ground and sent him crashing towards the trees without balance. While was still being carried by the momentum, the mask appeared behind him and shot and water dragon straight at him. The jutsu hit him dead on and sent him back towards Kakuzu, who seemed to have been waiting for him. He was not able to get his balance in time. Kakuzu smacked him on the back with a hard kick, but before he could be sent flying, the man grabbed him by his leg and spun around with him before sending him flying away. The mask appeared above him and shot an water bullet at him that was to send him crashing down the ground. Kakuzu also added to the attack by going through hand seals. Doten, Doryuden no Jutsu, he yelled as the two jutsus sped towards Naruto, one from upwards, and one from the side. Both jutsus seemed to hit him dead on and before sending him crashing towards the ground. Debris picked up from the crash, and after it died down, Naruto was seen standing still with an orange rib cage surrounding him. It was painful as hell, keeping even a small portion of his Susanoo standing. But he had to endure. He was even thinking of releasing a complete Susanoo. But at this stage, it might kill him. It did not matter anyway. He walked slowly towards Kakuzu and his clone. He deactivated his Susanoo. Kakuzu seemed to curse his luck at seeing Naruto's defense. "You have played enough," Naruto stated, looking straight at the mask. Kakuzu did not understand what the blonde meant. Naruto closed his right eye and pointed at the mask. Amaterasu, the mask then became engulfed in black flames. It was not all that clear because the thing's body was also pure black except for its mask. Naruto then began to walk slowly towards the mask to finish it up. But Kakuzu had other ideas. He attempted to delay the blonde by running towards him. Again, Amaterasu, Naruto said, setting Kakuzu's right arm ablaze with black flames. The man suppressed a shriek. The flames were indestructible. He had only one choice in the matter: cut off his arm. While he was still busy with those kinds of thoughts, Naruto went towards the mask with his blade in hand. He moved swiftly and cut it in half before its mask shattered, signaling its death. Kakuzu released his black threads because he now only had one arm. He could not fight on the same ground as the blonde. And so far he had the upper hand on the blonde. With just one use of those cursed eyes abilities, his mask was gone and he was left with only a single hand. Those eyes were indeed troublesome. But he could still win the battle. He charged towards Naruto with his threads rushing before him. They looked ahead to pierce the blonde. But Naruto brought out his gunbai to block the threads. Still he was pushed back by the threads. Kakuzu retrieved his threads before sending them towards Naruto. This time they were rushing towards Naruto in some insane speeds. Had it not been for his gunbai and armor, the threads would have left the blonde with holes on his body. As he did the first time, Naruto used his gunbai as a shield. But the speed and power of the threads this time force him back along with his gunbai. This could prove troublesome, Naruto stated, knowing that he could not effectively hit Kakuzu while those threads were still around. He had no way of cutting them off. He could force Kakuzu to cut them off by setting them ablaze with Amaterasu. But he decided not to. A one-armed Kakuzu cursed himself and his luck. But things went bad as he thought they were. Naruto's Susanoo suddenly came to life. This time it was big and standing on its feet. Naruto was standing behind it with an impassive blood-covered face. Again, Kakuzu cursed as he extended his black threads. He was not going to release another mask again. It would also be killed again. And now he only had 2 hearts remaining. This was not going good for him at all. How could he go against a Susanoo? It has to have some kind of weakness, he thought. The Susanoo took some giant steps towards him as both its hands got hold of black blades. It quickly swung its blade towards him, but he dodged the swing. The blade crashed into the ground, creating a crater. Before Kakuzu could do anything else, the other blade was right at him again. He brought out his threads to shield him. But the force of the attack was too powerful. It sent him flying away and he crashed into the trees. But he was not hurt. His skin was hardened and the threads added more protection to his body. The Susanoo then fused its blades before swinging it. It released a wave of energy that sped towards Kakuzu like an energy blade. The man quickly jumped up to avoid being cut in half by the attack. It was no doubt powerful. Some of his threads went so lucky as they got cut. He observed the technique as it continued to march on forward. The way it was going was the place he had placed Yugito's unconscious body, but he was not seeing her anywhere. He figured they must have taken her out of the way. He sighed in relief when he saw the technique Naruto release cut through a number of trees before finally dying down. The technique was repeated again. This time it was a lot faster than before. He quickly hardened himself to the limit and covered his entire body with his threads. The beam then hit him around his waist level. But his body was dealt no harm though. The technique merely cut his threads in half. When it reached his body, its power was already reduced and there was a fact that he had hardened his skin to avoid being cut in half. His eyes widened though, when suddenly the giant Susanoo's right arm was at him. It was formed into a large fist that slammed him down the ground. He was picked up again by the Susanoo. He was then hurled down the ground and crashed down like a bullet and formed a large crater. But the Susanoo did not stop there. Another fist pummeled him down while he was still on the ground. Still his body held on. But when the Susanoo joined both its hands together and formed one big fist, he could no longer hold on to his technique. Kakuzu felt as though every bone in body had been crushed. The pain he felt was unlike anything. It was like he had been hammered. Regardless how you look at it, it seemed that way, literally. The Susanoo then picked him up and was about to crush him when it suddenly dispersed, allowing his body to hit the ground. His legs were shaking, he was badly hurt and he was bleeding from his mouth. Had he not hardened his body, he would have been broken. The Susanoo had disappeared because Naruto was on his knees. He was coughing up a lot of blood. His Susanoo acted like before he had his eternal Mangekyo. But it hurt a lot more. The strain on his body was causing it to fail. His EMS was also no longer active. The eyes were just the normal Sharingan. He was losing power more quickly than he thought he would. But the damage to Kakuzu was already done by his Susanoo. Does this happen every time? Sasuke asked, looking at Naruto. He was a bit concerned for the blonde. He did not look healthy at all. It could not be good if he was not healthy. Zetsu remained quiet and simply watched. Although this may not kill Naruto, it would weaken him greatly. He was not about to have that under his watch. By some strong will, Naruto stood up even though every part of his body was screaming for him to stand down. Kakuzu was still down. He had time to test his jutsu. In his current condition, he could not quite make the jutsu on his own. He created a clone and formed a Rasengan on his right palm. The clone then began adding wind chakra into the Rasengan, giving it another shape. Soon a screeching yell from the jutsu echoed throughout the clearing. The jutsu Naruto had now was making the noise as its 4 blades spun around furiously. The clone disappeared in a puff of smoke. Then Naruto took a few steps towards Kakuzu, who was attempting to stand up. He knew from the screech the jutsu Naruto had was no ordinary jutsu. It could seriously do him bad. Naruto was about to throw the jutsu when it suddenly disappeared. He could no longer maintain that kind of power. Kakuzu felt relieved seeing this happen. Naruto created 3 clones and gave them much of his remaining chakra. He was only left with chakra to allow him to live. This of course, caused his eyes to return to normal. The clones formed the jutsu again before 2 of the holding the jutsu charged at Kakuzu. The man thought the jutsu would not be thrown at him. But he was shocked when the clones suddenly threw the jutsu at him. In doing so, they all disappeared in a puff of smoke. The jutsu sped at him in fast speeds, not giving him time to dodge. In a last-ditch attempt to shield himself, he brought his remaining threads in front of him. But that proved futile as the jutsu consumed him before exploding. "Be beautiful," Naruto said, seeing the marvelous work of his jutsu. I should ha. He was cut off when he felt some pain from his back. Something had pierced him from his back where his armor did not reach. He looked down to his chest and saw a wooded stake sticking out. It must have been Zetsu. His vision became blurry and he could faintly hear Sasuke screaming something. But he could not quite make it. Darkness consumed him as one memory flashed through his mind. Flashback: a tired Naruto slumped down into the ground. He was tired, very tired. His body was full of cuts and bruises and he was bleeding from his mouth. It had been one of his training sessions with Madara. The man was a slave worker. He worked him hard each time they came into this place. Each time he would be beaten until he could take no more. It was painful to his body, but he always endured for power, the power to protect himself. They were currently inside a powerful genjutsu created by Madara. The genjutsu was an example of the infinite Tsukuyomi. But Madara was only able to do the technique because of the Geto Mazo. He was using its power to make the genjutsu. In this world, Madara controlled everything, he was God. In this world, he took the form of his glory days. He also fought and moved like in his glory days. But, there was once a time that he was able to control some of the things in the world. But if Madara noticed, he would quickly cut him off the control. The fact that he could take share of management of the things in the world had surprised Madara. The man had commented that his eyes were special and very powerful if they could manipulate the genjutsu. The man also stated that it could be also because they were related in the fact that Naruto had Senju DNA, which helped in controlling the demonic statue. He liked viewing a certain memory, Madara's battle with Hashirama. The fight was epic and so much fun to watch. The first Hokage was one strong man. He deserved the title of the god of shinobi. He certainly had the power to make it so happen. What the man could do was beyond what he could ever think. He thought Madara had been scary strong when he was in his prime, but Hashirama was a monster. The Kyuubi alone should have been enough to take him down. But his Mokuten was too powerful. No wonder Madara craved the power. To achieve the power of the Sage of Six Paths did not specifically require Hashirama's cells. It only needed Senju DNA. But the Shodai's cells were just far superior to any other. There was also the fact that having his cells one would gain use of his precious Mokuten. The Kekkei Genkei was special and almighty powerful. There was few who could actually stop it. But it also carried the danger that it could consume you. He was glad that acquiring Senju DNA for him had been made in a way that those cells would not consume him if he were to weaken. You are still not doing enough, Madara stated, staring straight at Naruto. Naruto rose up and looked at his grandfather with an impassive stare. What did he expect from him? He was already giving it his all. He was still just a child to begin with. Shaking his head slightly, he decided to ignore the words because no matter what he would say, it would not be satisfactory to Madara. The man would still maintain his point that he was not doing enough. Tell me about the days before shinobi villages were formed, Naruto stated looking straight at Madara. They were done for the day, it was best that they talked about something else. Madara grunted and snapped his fingers to change the scenery. Before the shinobi villages were founded, clans existed solely and lived off on their own. They fought each other continuously for dominance. Over the years, there were two clans that stood above all other, Uchiha and Senju. Before I was even born, both clans hated each other. They were always in constant battle with one another. Their rivalry continued for generations after generations. These clans could never dominate each other. It was always bloodshed each time they met. So one could say that you grew up in a world torn up in battles like a war. Each clan was in constant war with the other, Naruto said after Madara had spoken. He could tell that Madara did not want to speak about this subject. If he wanted, he could have said something little more detailed than what he had said. Madara nodded. Precisely that, he said. There was no peace with the clans. They were always fighting. As you put it, it was like a world of never-ending war. But a few clans were able to live peacefully unlike the rest. An example would be like your grandmother's clan, the Uzumaki clan. You have told me that they were a lot more peaceful and refrained from fighting, Naruto stated knowing that his other side of heritage did not like fighting. They were very much a peaceful clan. Even though they were related to the Senju, they never did bother much with fighting. The Senju only became peaceful when Hashirama took the charge as leader of the clan. When that man was leader, the clan was unstoppable just like the Uchiha clan was when Madara took over as leader. Your childhood was much affected, that much was obvious, but Madara said nothing. Growing up in such a world had to influence your mindset and goal. In such a world, a peaceful person would love to bring peace in the battle-obsessed world. That is what Hashirama wanted and what you wanted. It did not matter if you were a child or not during those days. We were trained to fight for the pride of our clan. In each clan, we fought for our survival. Without fighting, it was just pitiful death, Madara stated reminiscing his younger days. You and Hashirama were friends from childhood, you were highly competitive with him. But when both of you became clan heads, you were just rivals. You had your own ideals on changing the world. Hashirama had his own ideals. He believed that people would be able to work together and then understand each other. That was the difference between you and him. Hashirama may have been powerful, but he was naive and a fool. People cannot simply understand each other. It is impossible. As long as there are winners, there will be losers. In turn, someone will always hate someone. Someone will always be plotting for revenge against someone, Madara stated. It was clear that he detested Hashirama's ideals. But at the same time, he respected the man for his power. So, that brought the birth of Eye of the Moon plan. Because the shinobi could not understand each other, you devised the plan to project them into a world where they cannot fight against each other. You would be in control of the world, Naruto eyed Madara impassively. The plan was a good one. And it had taken his grandfather quite some time to prepare for it. He even got old before he could even plan it. That is why he brought the traitor Obito. Why do you ask this? Are you interested in changing the world? Madara asked in a blank tone. But Naruto could detect a hint of curiosity. The man was curious on his answer. He would give it to him. No, he gave a firm answer. I have little interest in things that do not concern me. Perhaps if I was the supreme ruler of the elemental nations, I would wish for it to be the way I wanted. But I am not. So I have no interest in changing it. Madara seemed to be thinking about what Naruto had said for a moment before, he seemed to shrug. You are only saying this now, Naruto, but when you grow, he thought silently as he cancelled his genjutsu. I will be resting for a few days. This genjutsu puts a strain in my body and mind, Madara stated looking straight at Naruto. That is what always happens when you use that genjutsu, Naruto stated. I am going to the training ground. I want to test a few jutsus and what I have learned so far in the real world, Naruto answered as he turned away from Madara. He walked away silently, without much in his mind. All he wanted for the time, he just wanted to test his jutsu. Flashback and life was a fragile thing. It would easily be lost. But it was not that easy to gain. There was much process that had to be done in order to bring life into the world. All it took was a single pierce to the heart to take away the life of someone. He thought he would experience something entirely different, but there was nothing. He just felt cold. Perhaps it was because he knew he would come back to life soon. If not, he would have had the life story playing dimly within his mind. A second later, his eyes became lifeless and his heart stopped pumping blood around his body. Zetsu did not allow him to fall down. He caught him, not minding the blood that was staining his cloth. He removed the spike that he had pierced the blonde with. What did you do? Sasuke yelled, charging towards Zetsu. He was somewhat infuriated. He and Naruto may not be that close, but they lived together and had a nice working relationship together. Naruto was like the only family he had. He could not deny that. To see him killed just like that did not settle well with him. In fact, that thing seemed to be working with Naruto. Why would it kill him? Zetsu quickly held Naruto's body as shield to stop Sasuke from attacking him. He had not been told of what had just happened. And he was not planning on informing the raven-haired of all things. Well, it might be true that neither he nor Naruto were expecting his body to react this way at this time, but the plan had already been set. Why did you just kill him? Weren't you working with him? And who are you anyway? He is not dead, Zetsu stated. That was hard to believe, especially with what he had done. But yet he said it in a firm tone. It was not like denial or anything. That was just the best way he could put it for Sasuke. What the hell? How can you say that? He looked dead to him. Even Kakuzu was now dead after that impressive jutsu from Naruto. Naruto could not have been pierced through the chest and still be alive. Even with the condition he had been in, it was not hard to believe that he was dead. His eyes also did not lie to him. He is just sleeping, he will be awake soon, Zetsu stated, staring straight at Sasuke. He wanted the Uchiha to calm down. If he did not, he would leave him here. Go and take the Jinchuriki so we can get out of here before Kumo Shinobi come here. I will explain things later. He did not plan on doing so. He would say something about Itachi. That would get the teen's attention and occupy his mind for a while. Sasuke stared at Zetsu for a few moments before nodding. He knew that should Kumo Shinobi find them here, they would make much noise and suspect them for trying to capture Yugito even though there are Akatsuki members at the scene. Kumo and Konoha did not have the best of relations. The relationship between the two villages was somewhat unstable. If one did wrong, the two villages would certainly lock horns. He grudgingly walked towards Yugito's unconscious body and picked her up before placing her on his shoulder. He walked calmly towards Zetsu. What about him? He asked, looking at Kakuzu's corpse. I will handle it, Zetsu said. He would just take the head and take it and cash in the bounty himself. If he involved Gurren at this matter, it would cause much trouble. People would easily connect the dots. He walked over to the body and cut off the head. He took out a scroll and sealed it within. He had come prepared knowing that something like this would happen. Hidan's bounty was not worth much. He would leave it alone. Let us go, Zetsu stated calmly while carrying Naruto's body and his gunbai over his shoulder. Where are we going and what of Itachi? We are going back to the Fire Country. There is an old Uchiha hideout that is close to the border. He paused for a moment. I will direct Itachi there. We can't stand here anymore. Kumo Shinobi led by the Raikage himself are already on their way. Sasuke nodded and they hopped on the trees as they made their gateway. Still he was curious, how do you know that? You have been here all this time. I have a clone in Kumo. It was watching over for things for me, Zetsu replied, not even looking at the Uchiha. He was concentrated on getting Sasuke to the hideout so he could move out. He did not want Naruto's body to become cold. Sasuke nodded. He was not too sure how that would work though, but he was not going to question that. He looked at Naruto. He was dead. Are you going to explain things? Not here, we have to get the hideout first. Sasuke only increased his pace. Naruto was already dead, no matter how he acted, he could not bring him back. He just wanted to understand what had happened. Naruto did not appear to have been shocked at the betrayal. He still had his impassive expression when the lights went out. So there had to be something going on he did not know. Who are you? You did not answer when I asked you earlier, Sasuke asked curiously. He was obviously not human. Even a child could tell that. Naruto calls me his trusted companion. Karen calls me Naruto's friend, Zetsu responded. If you do not want to die, you will keep my existence a secret. Sasuke shrugged off the last words. They meant nothing to him. No wonder Naruto is the way he is. If you are what he calls a friend, he cannot possibly understand how we behave and blend in nicely amongst his age group or other humans for that matter. Are you saying that because Naruto has no trusted friend amongst others, he cannot blend in with the others? Sasuke nodded. Have you seen how he acts around other people? What is wrong with it? He saw no wrong in the way Naruto was. The blonde was cool just the way he was. If there was something else to his personality, then something would have been wrong. Sasuke decided it was best to keep his mouth shut about the matter. He did not expect Zetsu to respond with that type of question. Well, that lasted only for a moment. Since when has Naruto been in contact with Itachi? I would not exactly say they were in contact, Zetsu responded, keeping his eyes on the road ahead. They first talked after the sand invasion, and only spoke recently when Naruto was outside of Konoha. Sasuke nodded. But he kept the questions going. You said you would direct him to where we are going. How will you do that? Do you know where he is now? You are asking too many questions, Zetsu stated, eyes narrowing at Sasuke. It's becoming annoying. That shut up the Uchiha. He no longer asked questions, instead he chose to keep going forward. He was not going to be told twice that he was annoying. He knew enough about how one felt when annoyed by multiple questions. In his younger days, he was also mostly annoyed by questions asked to him by annoying fan girls. Who knew if Zetsu reacted the same way as Naruto when annoyed? It was best not to find out. He was still concerned about the issue with Naruto though. But he had too much in his head to have that give him a headache. The fact that he was going to meet his brother and fight him was already enough for him. It was best for him to remain quiet and sort out his thoughts. Chapter 24 Konoha. You must know already that Naruto went to the Lightning Country, Tsunade said, looking straight at her former teammate, Jiraiya. The Toad Sage was mostly aware of all things that happened within the village. Something like Naruto's disappearance from the village would have reached him quickly, even though the blonde never told him. Yes, I know. That is what is worrying me, Jiraiya stated calmly, earning a raised brow from Tsunade. She was wondering what would make the Sannin worry if Naruto was just going to handle some Akatsuki members along with Sasuke. What are you worried about? Tsunade questioned in a bit of a low tone than the loud one she usually uses. What Naruto did in Kurigakure is not what every shinobi can do. Not even the Sannins could do it. He also has the Kyuubi by him, even able to summon it to fight for him. On top of that, everyone knows that he is Minato's son, even though he does not see it that way. People can suspect that he knows the Hiraishin, which was what made his father famous and dangerous, Jiraiya said. What are you getting at? Itachi is known internationally and became very much dangerous, with only the Mangekyo Sharingan. Naruto not only has the Mangekyo, he has Mokuton, the Kyuubi and possibly the Flying Thunder God technique. The Sannin paused for a moment. Those things make him much more powerful than anyone. What do you think other villages think when they see him? Tsunade realized what Jiraiya was getting at. They will feel threatened by his power, she said. Exactly my point, the Toad Sage stated with a nod. You also have to look at the fact that he is from here. This village is the strongest of the 5 great shinobi villages. It is obvious that villages like Kumo and Iwa are not satisfied with being second best to us. Naruto comes in to cement Konoha's place in top. With him, Kakashi, Guy, Sasuke, you and I, others might think that we have too much power. Tsunade sighed. They might think so, which won't be good. But we have been staying out of other villages' ways so not to provoke trouble, the Godime stated. If other villagers saw that Konoha had too much power, they would not hesitate to team up and take it down, as it is the bigger threat. She did not want something like that happening, not now and ever. She wanted this peace to continue. I know that the Raikage already thinks like that. But most importantly, he feels threatened by Naruto. We must not forget about Iwa, they already hate Naruto's father. It is possible that there is a strong dislike of him in the village. The only reason that Iwa had yet to place Naruto in their bingo books was because the Tsuchikage was not stupid. He would not dare place Naruto in his bingo books without evaluating things first. And now Naruto has gone off to the Lightning Country to battle Akatsuki who are trying to capture Kumo's Jinchuriki. We all know that Kumo's Jinchuriki are closely related to the Raikage, Tsunade stated looking into the ceiling. This was truly bothersome. The other Jinchuriki was a brother to the Raikage and the other was like his niece. If Naruto got involved with them it would surely spell trouble. I have no doubt that those two will be able to save Yugito. But what will happen afterwards worries me, Jiraiya said clearly worried even with his tone. Tsunade nodded. Naruto will surely go to Kumogakure. He will surely say something that will piss off the Raikage, she released a sigh. Is he aware of the Raikage's feelings towards him? Yes, Jiraiya stated with nod. I told him about it just before he left the village, even if the situation could not be helped. He would have had him, Kakashi, and Sasuke go rather than Sasuke and Naruto. Do you think he went there on purpose? Tsunade questioned. It would certainly be of no surprise that he went there just to provoke the Raikage and see how he would react. But she also believed that Naruto was smart enough to know that Konoha did not need any trouble. She just wanted peace to the village, not any more wars with other villages. I don't know, Jiraiya answered quietly, taking a thoughtful look on his face. He might have. But just to make sure nothing happens, I will head to Kumo and intercept him before he gets into the village. The Raikage will surely not be thanking for him saving Yugito. Tsunade nodded in understanding. But make sure that you return with them. You are needed in this village should something occur. Since Akatsuki are very active these days, we need every available shinobi close to the village. It was Jiraiya's time to nod in understanding. I want to tell you something important, Haim, Jiraiya said in a rather serious tone and expression on his face. Tsunade too turned serious knowing that her former teammate had something to tell her important given by the look on his face. What is it? She asked. Naruto is behind Otogakure. Tsunade was silent for a few moments. She stared at Jiraiya's serious expression as she kept her silence. Finally, I was afraid something like this would happen after he told us he had killed Orochimaru, she said. Did he confirm it to you? No, Jiraiya said shaking his head. He did not, neither did he deny his involvement. But when you asked him about it, he did deny it. I confirmed my suspicions after I met with him when he was leaving the village. Although there is no hard evidence to prove it, I know he is behind it. What now? I don't know, Jiraiya stated honestly. Do we confront him about it? Tsunade asked. It was really the same question as the one she had asked previously. I don't know, the Toad Sage gave the same response. But this time he added. New Otogakure is not really built for a military village. The way it's built, it is more like a capital for business. Its hotels are grade A and are quite expensive. Merchants have already started operating. It has wonderful gardens that I think were made using Naruto's Mokuden. Its hot springs are wonderful. I have never seen hot springs such as the ones that I saw there. If you need a waterfall, you don't need to go outside the village, there are 3 there, men build. They have also found a way to mine iron. When other villages hear about this, they will surely flock there to buy. The palace for the leader is quite a building to see, it can easily be a tourist main attraction. I don't know how they did it, but they already have bought 2 gold mines, one in Shimo and the other in Takigakure. I do suspect some foul play though. They have also bought themselves into the shipping business, they own 3 boats that board from the wave country. I have also heard that the Snow Village's princess was going to visit the village soon. I don't know for what reason, but I can only guess that it has to do with the Snow's advanced technology. I think the money from his father and from the Uchiha clan was used in the rebuilding of Oto. It seems to me like Naruto wants to make it his home, Jiraiya finished explaining things to Tsunade. More than anything, Tsunade was impressed with the work Naruto has done in Oto. In just a short time he had already done that, while keeping his appearances in Konoha. He had to be well connected to be able to pull all that. Well, it was no surprise that the blonde was connected. But still, this would mean that Oto would become a commercial village. It seems like Naruto wanted it to become a capital of the elemental nations, a place for business other than fighting. It was so unlike him. She would think that he would build something made entirely for fighting. If it is like that, it means that it is not a village for fighting but for generating money and for rich people looking to live a lavish lifestyle. Do you think he will leave Konoha because he has his own village? Jiraiya shook his head. He won't. The Sannin clearly believed his own words. He had confidence in his belief. If he wanted, he would have done it already. I don't think any of our shinobi could have stopped him if he were to have left. Konoha to him is like a military village, which it is. He won't leave this village. I think he needs it for its manpower. Did you not just tell me that Mei has stated in the alliance that should the wedding between her and Naruto not happen within 6 months to a year, the alliance would be terminated? Tsunade nodded at this. He would have never accepted to get married to Mei in the first place if he was going to leave this village. He has made ties with Yugao. I have no doubt that she would never betray Konoha. Tsunade was silent for a few seconds. He never spends any time near the villagers. He does not even seem interested in them or anything they do. But the name Konoha means something else to him. I think that has to do with his troubled childhood. We don't know how he dealt with the traumas of the past. What he is now is the results of the villagers' treatment towards him. I also don't think that at this time he forgives them. Perhaps in the future he might. Jiraiya paused for a moment. But what is important is that we know that he is behind Oto and has no evil intentions towards Konoha. They really did a number on him, huh? Tsunade looked at Jiraiya's expression. There was some guilt. She guessed he still blamed himself for what happened to Naruto. Certainly, if he had been there, things would have turned out differently. But the past could not be changed, it just had to be embraced and then one could move on. Let's go get some sake before you leave. I am done for the day, Tsunade said standing up. Jiraiya pecked up suddenly and grinned towards his former teammate. The following day Yugito had woken up during the way back to the hideout, but Zetsu had given him the order to knock her out again. He explained that he did not want her to know the location of the hideout. Naruto would not have been pleased they allowed her to get the direction of the hideout even though he never used it. But it was Uchiha property, it surely would not please the blonde if a non-Uchiha found this place and made use of it. Their way to the hideout was quite an uneventful. Zetsu was not speaking, he had his mind on other things rather than talking to Sasuke. He had to be worried about Naruto. As it were now, Naruto was dead. If Obito was not know of this, he would certainly move to take Nagato's Rinnegan knowing that it was the only way to revive him. But if he were to get someone to use the Edo Tensei and bring back Naruto to live, the blonde would surely find a way to get his life back. With his power and an immortal body, anything was possible. But right now, he knew where Nagato was. One of his clones was watching the man and his partner, Conan. It would take a minute for him to get there, and since he could not be sensed, even by a great sensor like Nagato, it would be easy for him to manipulate the leader of a Megakure. That was all he needed to do to ensure that Naruto was brought back to life. Failure was not an option for him. He had to do a perfect mission, as Naruto would say. It was the blonde's will that he succeed. It would surely do no one any favor if Naruto was not brought back, well, mostly him. Stay here, Zetsu said as he walked towards another room within the hideout. They were within the Uchiha hideout inside one of the rooms. Yugito had been laid to rest. Aren't you going to get her some treatment? She is badly hurt even though her wounds seem to be healing, Sasuke stated, seeing that Zetsu had simply told him to put her in bed and that was it. She is a Jinchuriki, she will be fine, Zetsu responded. But if you want to treat her, you can with your medical kit, he said, walking away from the room. A few minutes later, after Zetsu had put Naruto's body on a bed, he went back to the room he left Sasuke within. Itachi would be arriving in about 2 hours. When that does happen, he would have to leave to take care of his mission. The two Uchihas would battle it all out, and hopefully, he would come back before they had finished their business. Zetsu looked towards Yugito. She was bandaged nicely and cleaned of her blood. She still wore her torn-up clothes though. Sasuke had the decency not to take off her clothes. He only bandaged parts of the body that he could take a look without seeing anything private. He smiled. Naruto would have not done something like that. The blonde would have simply taken off her clothes and cleaned her if she was something to him. He would not have cared about having to see a woman naked. Perhaps Sasuke had nice thoughts when seeing a woman naked. And he did not want to be tempted to do anything evil to the woman while she was sleeping. That would be of no surprise, though, given who his sensei was. Looking at the Uchiha, Zetsu could not deny that he was so much different from the dead blonde in the other room. Sasuke was also different from his brother. Itachi was a pacifist, he liked peace and did not like fighting. but only did so because he knew it was necessary. Sasuke on the other hand no problems with fighting or killing anyone. He may have changed, but he was still impassive towards death, especially if it is someone who was not related to him. Perhaps in that respect he was the same as Naruto. The blonde had to shame in admitting that he thoroughly enjoyed a good dance, even if he would killing multiple people. Are you going to explain things? Sasuke asked in a dead serious tone. As far as he was concerned, Naruto was dead. Zetsu had said he would explain things once they got here, and he had also stated that the blonde was merely sleeping, not dead. But his eyes told him a different story. Zetsu sighed. There is nothing to explain really, he said. Naruto will tell you himself when he wakes up, that is if he wills. Right now, focus on your upcoming battle with Itachi. Sasuke glared at Zetsu, but did not do anything. How can I do that? Naruto is lying somewhere dead. I don't even know who you are and what you are going to do to his body. And all you tell me is that he is only sleeping, while you and I know it that he is dead. Zetsu turned away from the Uchiha. I am missing Naruto already, he said loud enough for Sasuke to hear him. His words of course surprised the Uchiha. He interpreted indifferently. Zetsu was saying that because Sasuke was asking him too much questions that he should not bother with him. Why could he not just be a good boy and stay still? Naruto was never annoying if the situation was bad. He always stayed calm like there was nothing wrong. He liked that about the blonde. He wished for Sasuke to remain calm and relax. Where are you going? Let us go outside, Zetsu stated, walking away from the room. Sasuke followed suit since he really had no other options. There was nothing he could do but follow the artificial human. Itachi will be here in a few hours. They walked outside the clearing and stood silently, for a few moments. Sasuke sat down to clear his mind so not to have many things troubling him as he waited for his brother. Zetsu remained standing with a few thoughts in his head. Naruto had planned for this place to be where Itachi would fight with Sasuke after the former that approached him. But he had planned for the battle to take place while they were coming back from Kumogakure after delivering Yugito to the wreckage. He had not planned for things to move out quickly. When he told Sasuke that they would be away for about 2 weeks, this was where they would be staying. They waited silently for Itachi to appear for more than 2 hours. Finally, Itachi appeared before the two and still with his stoic expression still on. The Uchiha was still in his Akatsuki cloak as he appeared. He was expecting to see Naruto with Sasuke, but was surprised to see the blonde absent. He looked at his younger brother. He was staring at him with an impassive expression on his face and fists clenched. He smiled inwardly seeing that his younger brother had grown well. Where is Naruto? Itachi finally asked, breaking the silence. He asked looking straight at Zetsu. Sleeping, Zetsu replied, turning away from the Uchiha. He was walking back towards the house. You will not be able to see him now, but are welcome to settle things with Sasuke. And please don't destroy this hideout. I don't want the guest to awaken. He was referring to Yugito. Then Zetsu disappeared off to Naruto's room. Itachi looked straight at his younger brother. Hello Sasuke, the older Uchiha said calmly. Itachi, Sasuke replied in a whisper with barely contained emotions threatening to escape. Naruto's room. Black Zetsu separated himself from White Zetsu and they became two beings. Why do I have to stay here? I also want to see Naruto revive. There is a chance that the Rinnegan might awaken after the ordeal, White Zetsu complained. You have to stay here and observe the battle. You also can't do what I can do. You are useless in this kind of mission, and you have to make sure that should those two destroy the hideout during their fight, Yugito is not caught in the middle while still unconscious, Black Zetsu explained to his other half. Fine, the other half said. How will you get him near Nagato? Naruto bound both of us to him. He can summon us whenever he wants. In the same way, we can also summon him, Black Zetsu stated. I am going. With that he left. White Zetsu sighed. Well, at least I get to watch two Uchihas fight in an all-out battle, he said to himself. Sometime later Nagato was walking in his mechanical walker with Konan right beside him and also his 6 paths. They were on their way towards Tsuchigomo to collect Seiken, the 6 tails. Obito had said they should attack the Jinchuriki at the same time so that Naruto would not be able to defend all of the Jinchuriki at the same time. Obito had seemed certain that Naruto would in fact try to protect the Jinchurikis. Now Nagato was not too sure about that. Naruto had already killed one of the Jinchuriki, and from what he knows so far, the blonde Uchiha does not really care for much. So it was a surprise to hear the man say Naruto would definitely try to stop them. Perhaps not out of care for the Jinchuriki, but to stop their plan for peace. That seems to be the likely reason. Orders were orders. But he was not too concerned about it. With this, he would only be closer to achieving world peace. Yes, going all out at this time would bring him closer to uniting the world through pain. He had been patient enough. Now his dream, Yahiko's dream, was looking like it was going to take form. He had already brought calm in Omegakure after taking over from Hanzo. He could do the same to the entire world. With his power and the weapon they would create, peace was possible in this world of pain. Still, Toby would not be giving him orders forever. Sometimes he did not understand the man, and he also has been unable to find more about the man. He was mysterious in a unique way. He was sure evil, that he could not mistake. But at the same time, the man surely had helped him with his goal. He was grateful for that, but still, he sensed that he was being used. That was why he wanted to be a step faster than Toby. If he did not do that, he would surely be in trouble and all his work would have been for nothing. He was not going to allow that to happen though. If that happened, all his pain, Konan's pain, Yahiko's pain, would have been for nothing. He would not have that happen. He would ensure with every muscle fiber in his body that his plan for peace became a success. Tendo looked at Konan. She was his only friend, the only person he cared for in the whole world. His parents had been killed long ago, so he had no family since he was the only child to them. He had no relatives to speak of. The Uzumaki had been eradicated within their village by the combined forces of Kumogakure and Iwagakure. He would make sure that all was well with her. He had been with her so far as he could remember. She was always there, looking after him, given his current state. Konan saw the look Tendo gave her and looked at Nagato. Is the something wrong, Nagato? She asked emotionlessly. Nagato shook his head. No, he said. He looked far ahead to where they faced. He could do this mission alone. But Konan had insisted on following him. He did not necessarily need her to get the job done even though they were partners. But she wanted to be with him just to ensure that he was okay. You have not been looking well lately, Konan stated, taking her eyes off her partner. To be more specific, you seem to be thinking a lot more than you usually do. Nagato shifted his eyes at Konan, this time not with one of his paths, but he himself. He looked ahead shortly after that. It was so much like her to notice even the smallest changes in him. She could read him even when his face showed nothing. She was better at sensing his emotions. Sometimes he thought she knew him better than he did himself. Even with the slightest change with him, she would quickly pick it up. Well, she was always a caring person, towards him that is. Despite her cold appearance, she worried about him and would not hesitate to put her life on the line should he be in danger. It was a pity that since she stopped smiling, he could no longer guess what was going inside her head. I have, Nagato admitted. Konan waited for him to tell her what had been consuming his thoughts. She would not ask, he was going to tell her. Even if she had to wait for more than an hour or days, he would eventually tell her what was bothering him. He was always like that and she always did things in this manner. He did not keep things from her. He was always honest with her. Perhaps that was what made them effective partners and good friends. After a few moments of silence, Nagato opened his mouth. This world is, he trailed off when he sensed something behind him. Despite his many eyes, the black mass seemed to have just appeared out of nowhere. He was not quick enough to react, neither were his paths. The thing seemed to have come from the ground beneath his mechanical walker and sneaked its way towards him like a shadow. It had moved like a shadow, and he did not sense it until it was too late. It was on its own surprising given that he was sensor. It should not have been able to get so close to him without him being unable to realize it. The black mass then got hold of him and covered his entire body. He felt himself losing control over his body, like something was taking it over. Yes, that was it. Something was pushing his consciousness away to take control over his mind. He mastered his will to push back and nearly succeeded until the black mass stabbed him on his stomach. Some liquid entered his system, making him feel dizzy. And soon he lost control over his body. Nagato. What is wrong? Konan yelled, obviously worried for her friend. She could see the black mass covered his entire upper body. The thing had a really deranged grin on its face. She did not understand what was going on, hence she could not act. The six paths were just standing still, doing nothing. Nagato is not available right now, Black Zetsu replied in his dark tone. Given his answer, paper shurikens immediately formed around Konan as she prepared to smile. But, Nagato, merely grinned wickedly, making her uncomfortable. The six bodies of pain then all turned towards her with the same grin. Nagato had. She cursed her luck. She could not possibly take on Nagato. She knew everything about his abilities and weaknesses, but even so, this was Nagato's body, she could not fight her teammate. She did not even understand what was going on. Stand still and nobody gets hurt, Nagato stated. I am just borrowing him for a moment. Who are you? What do you want? Tendo raised his hand towards her. Shut up. If you don't, I will be forced to take some actions to shut you up, he stated calmly. Again, Konan cursed. Zetsu then wondered how he would get Naruto here. The poison he had infected Nagato with would not last for too long. And if he wasted time, Nagato would regain control over his body. He would not get another opportunity after this. He had observed Nagato for about an hour before making his move. He wanted him to get into the right place and to time his move perfectly so not to make any mistakes. He had waited for the man to walk into a place where there were shadows. He was able to blend in with the shadows perfectly. It was good that this form gave no chakra, or else the Rinnegan would have noticed him. He had succeeded in taking Nagato's body, but now there was a challenge. He could not summon Naruto while still in possession of Nagato's body. If he had summoned Naruto's corpse before attempting to possess Nagato, the man would have sensed him and put his whole operation in danger. That was something he did not want. This was his only opportunity to revive Naruto. The blonde would not be too pleased if he were to take too long to bring him back to life. Sighing, he realized that he had one choice. Bring Naruto to my location, Black Zetsu stated in his mental connection with White Zetsu. They could telepathically speak to each other regardless of the distance. Have you already possessed Nagato? Yes, now hurry up and come here. How do I come there with Naruto? I can't travel underground with him, White Zetsu questioned. Just get here without him. I will tell you what to do. Fine, White Zetsu said, sensing that his other half was a little impatient. Well, it had been an hour already. The battle between Sasuke and Itachi was reaching its conclusion. He did not want to miss that. Black Zetsu ignored the glaring Konan as he waited for his other half to appear. He did not have to wait for too long as W Zetsu appeared from a nearby tree and walked towards him while at the same time staring at Konan with a grin. What did I tell you before I left? Black Zetsu asked, looking straight at his other half. You told me to wait at the hideout. Black Zetsu sighed. I told you that we were both bound to Naruto and that we could summon him. Oh, White Zetsu mouthed, realizing what Black Zetsu was telling him to do. Naruto. Konan thought. Might it be by any chance Uchiha Naruto? She was given the answer when White Zetsu went through hand seals. Kuchio's no jutsu. In a puff of smoke, Naruto's body appeared on the ground. Konan widened her eyes. He was definitely dead. There was no mistake about it. Then if he was dead, what did it mean for the Kyuubi? And who could have killed him? Madara had insisted that he was powerful and the only one who can take him down was Nagato. I am going back to make sure that everything is well at the hideout, White Zetsu stated before disappearing. Now then. Konan then realized what was about to happen. You want to use Nagato's eyes to revive him, she said. Upon those words leaving her mouth, all of Pain's 6 bodies surrounded her. Stay still, Tendo stated in a firm tone. Konan knew, if she moved, she would be in danger. Gedu. Rinne Tensai. Just as Konan had feared, the King of Hell appeared as Nagato, appeared to be very much concentrated on the jutsu. Channeling chakra through the King of Hell, Zetsu was able to retrieve Naruto's soul from the afterlife. A green beam shot out of the King of Hell's mouth and hit Naruto's corpse. It covered his entire body for a few moments before dying down. Just then, the King of Hell disappeared. Konan waited as the green light disappeared. She had never actually seen Nagato use the technique, but he had always used the other one to revive his 6 paths. But never had he used the Rinne Tensai. Madara always said that he was not to use the technique so carelessly and there were limits to using the technique. And so Nagato had always used other techniques but never this one. Still, the fact that Thing had possessed Nagato knew about this meant that it knew a lot more about Nagato's eyes. That also meant that Naruto himself knew of the Rinnegan's abilities. The powers of the Dujutsu were supposed to be a mystery. So how does Naruto know about it? She was getting the feeling that Madara knew something about Naruto. He had to know, he always had something to say about the blonde. Finally, Naruto's body twitched and he slowly got up. He did not seem to mind his location or whatever that was going on with him. He simply looked at his arms with a blank expression on his face. His head was making some unbearable noise. He silently shook his head and as if trying to brush off the troubling noise. He slowly looked around himself before turning towards Nagato. That was a rather unwanted sleep. An interesting experience nevertheless, Naruto said in his usual monotone voice. He was very much pleased with the work Zetsu had done. He did not spend much time in the afterlife, that was a good thing for him. I am glad that it went well. It would have been unpleasant if your soul was held back by something, Zetsu stated, still in possession of Nagato's body. But he could feel that the owner of the body was fighting to gain control. His medicine must have run out of power. You would have found a way to bring me back. Naruto said looking straight at Zetsu. Nagato is fighting me for control, Zetsu stated. Leave his body. You have done your mission perfectly well, Naruto said looking up at the sky. What is the current situation? He asked completely ignoring Konan who was simply staring at him with an impassive on her face. She did not feel like talking to him or asking him. Even if she did, with that look on his face, she could tell that she would not get any answer from the blonde. Sasuke is currently fighting Itachi. But they should be done by now. They are at the hideout at the moment. Yugito is still unconscious at the hideout, Zetsu reported. Konan was quite surprised. That they could speak like that while she could still hear them. It seemed like they did not care if she could hear them or not. They were just busy with their business. Sasuke is fighting Itachi. What was that? She knew they were brothers. But Itachi was supposed to be doing his mission. If he was at this hideout, that meant that he had walked off grid. Did it mean that he had betrayed the Akatsuki? Madara had always said that Itachi could not be trusted even though the man did his missions perfectly well and never showed any signs of betrayal. I did not miss much, Naruto said in a quiet tone. Zetsu then quickly left Nagato's body and rushed towards Naruto. Nagato slowly regained control over his body and Konan was ready to fight in defense of her partner who seemed to be a little dizzy. Go rendezvous with White Zetsu. Summon me after a minute or so, Naruto instructed, to which Black Zetsu nodded. You are not planning to fight him here. If you do that, you will stop him from taking Seiken, Black Zetsu responded with a question. That may be true, Naruto said still looking at the sky. But I have no interest in a fight right now. Besides, we have to do damage control with Sasuke. He will surely be in anger after learning the truth. It is best to manage the situation before he does anything stupid. Before this, we knew that Seiken would be captured. It is still the same as that. Let Nagato have his fun, the blonde explained, keeping his tone blank as he spoke. You are going to allow the Jinchuriki to be taken. Before, we had not accounted for this to happen. But now we are in a position to stop one of the Jinchuriki from being taken, Black Zetsu said, clearly surprised by Naruto's response. Yes, Naruto responded, again surprising Black Zetsu. I have something that is better planned for them, so there is no need to save them. Zetsu nodded and disappeared from Naruto. If he had something planned, that meant that it was something good. But he wondered what it was because, if he allowed them to be captured, they would be killed. What more could he do after that? Well, it was Naruto, he could do some interesting things. He just had to wait and see. Naruto then turned towards Konan. She was looking at him with the same impassive expression he always uses. She seemed ready for a battle. He was one of their targets. But she should know that because of his death, it meant that the Kyuubi was no longer inside of him. Still, it did not stop Naruto from asking, do you wish to dance with me? Nagato was still trying to wrap his mind around what had just occurred. So Konan responded, it would be foolish to allow you to leave. But the fact that you were dead means that the Kyuubi is no longer sealed within you. Either it also died after your death or you extracted it before you died, you know of its location, the only female within the Akatsuki stated. Ho! Naruto kept his impassive expression. But a small smile flicked through for a second. Either the Kyuubi is dead, or somewhere else, I know the answer. Given that, you cannot allow me to leave. You want to capture me so to get that information out of me. With the Rinnegan, it can be achieved rather easily. Konan did not show her surprise at his knowledge of the Rinnegan. If he knew that the Dujutsu could read minds, then he knew a lot more. It would explain why he was so calm given the situation. Nagato was unbeatable. He had never lost a battle. She did not think that this child in front of her would be able to do that. But still, the fact that he was so calm even knowing about the Rinnegan raised question within her mind. Was he just arrogant? Perhaps, but he did not seem that way. Kyuubi Jinchuriki, Nagato stated in a dead voice. His ripple pattern eyes staring straight at the blonde. The six paths took their position around him. Naruto activated his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan and smiled slightly. The god of Omegakure and his angel are preparing to dance with Uchiha Naruto, how exciting. I can feel the excitement tingling in every part of my body. He began releasing large amounts of chakra that surprised both Akatsuki members. The chakra he was releasing caused some debris to pick up around him. But it toned down after a few moments. But this is one dance I will miss. It is a bit sad though, he said. Nagato was still not in the condition he wanted him at. It would not please him as much as it would when fighting him at a perfect condition. You have come to me. I will not allow you to escape here without the Kyuubi in my grasp. The Biju's power is essential in my plans for peace, Nagato stated in a calm manner while his eyes narrowed at Naruto. Your plans? Naruto shook his head. The man was collecting Bijus without even knowing that he was going to do that for. He was just a means to an end. Pitiful, he said pausing for a moment. He could tell Nagato the truth, but that would not do it for him. He wanted to fight the man. As much as I woo, he never got to finish his sentence as he disappeared in a puff of smoke. Nagato widened his eyes before looking at Konan. I did not think he was actually serious about it. He told that black thing to summon him after a minute or so, Konan stated relaxing as she could no longer sense Naruto's chakra. His chakra has disappeared, he is not anywhere close to us, Nagato stated. I can't believe I was used like that. How do you think that he knew of your ability to revive the dead? I don't know, Nagato replied. This creates a problem. We don't know if the Kyuubi was still sealed within him when he died. If it was, then we would have two Bijus missing. Didn't Madara say he knew where to get a substitute for the three tails? Konan questioned. He did, Nagato said with a nod. But I think that the Kyuubi has been freed from Naruto for some time. Months ago, he summoned it, not transform into it. Something like that should be impossible to do given that you would have to break the seal to do so. I think that way too, Konan said. We will deal with this after we have completed our mission. We still have to retrieve the six tails, Nagato stated as he initiated his mechanical walker to move. He wanted to get this done and return to Omegakure where he could deal with all this mess. Uchiha Hideout Naruto was summoned back to the hideout by Zetsu. He was summoned at the place which Sasuke and Itachi had been fighting. He looked around for a moment, at least they did not destroy the hideout. Their battle was staged outside the building. It would have forced them to move out of the place if the hideout was destroyed. Sasuke had to recover first before they could do anything else. The destruction to the landscape was a little attracting. Perhaps Sasuke had used his cursed seal and Itachi used his Susanoo. But due to the fact the Itachi was almost blind, he did not use it often. It was used as his ace card. I was hoping to witness this, Naruto murmured silently. Well, it could not be helped. He was dead during the time the battle took place. Zetsu could not record it because he was busy trying to revive him. He could not have been able to possibly observe the fight given the circumstances. It was quite an interesting battle, Zetsu said. At least White Zetsu had watched it while Black Zetsu was busy with his mission. I would imagine so, it was a battle between two Sharingans after all. Naruto said looking towards the house. His EMS was still activated, he had not bothered to deactivate it. Everything went according to the script, I hope. Zetsu nodded knowing what Naruto was referring to. He showed it to him with his last remaining power before eventually dying. Naruto nodded. Telling him would have not been effective as showing it to him. If told, he might have called Itachi a bluff. But even when he was shown the event, because it was a genjutsu he might find it hard to believe. However, the new Sasuke believed his brother, that I am positive of. So what now? Matadabe's Jinchuriki has already awakened due to the battle. She was currently restrained due to the lack of chakra and Sasuke is still out cold. I believe he is also suffering from chakra exhaustion, Zetsu stated looking straight at Naruto. The battle had taken a lot from Sasuke despite the condition Itachi was in. Well, that was just a testimony of how truly the Uchiha was. We will rest until Sasuke can function properly. Then we will head to Kumogakure, Naruto responded walking towards the house. He needed to wash himself and change his clothing before the rest. I had thought that the Rinnegan would have awakened due to this experience, Zetsu said following Naruto from behind. I was not expecting it to happen. Madara awakened his near the end of his lifespan. But due to our different bodies and experiments, he hypothesized that mine would awaken sooner than his. I have also carried some test, and I believe that it will awaken soon when it wills. You don't seem to be in a hurry to acquire it, Zetsu noted. Perhaps, Naruto responded as he continued to make way towards the house. How was the afterlife? Naruto narrowed his eyes at Zetsu before responding, empty. The answer puzzled Zetsu as he could not understand what that word meant. He was not expecting Naruto to define his experience in the afterlife with a single word, empty. What did it mean? He wondered. There surely had to be a meaning and something hidden behind that word. Empty defined a few scenarios. With regards to Naruto, he could not think of a scenario which could have caused the experience to be merely empty. Well, this was Naruto, even though he understood the blonde better than anyone, he could not fathom the meaning behind his respond. Zetsu directed Naruto towards the room Yugito was being restrained within. Before he rests, the blonde opted to see the Jinchuriki from Kumogakure first. Sasuke was already at rest after his fight with Itachi. But just to be safe, Zetsu had bound him so that when he wakes up, he does not get up to do anything stupid in anger because of Konoha's decisions. His brother was forced to live a horrible life, so was he. It was obvious that he would be very much angry when he does wake up, hence the restraints. Naruto also did not want to end up doing something to Sasuke to stop him from getting killed by Konoha shinobi. Naruto looked at Zetsu after he had reached Yugito's room. Go to the hideout and get me new clothing. These ones are damaged, he said looking at the armor he wore. He had been fighting wearing it. And things got a little bloody during the fight, it was necessary that he change it. Zetsu nodded and disappeared to the hideout. He was always doing something. Well, at least Naruto won't need the armor until he chooses to leave for Kumo. For the night he would not be wearing it. So he was not going to hurry up in returning to the hideout. He would take his time to also rest and do some other things. He was always working both physically and mentally. He deserved some rest. Naruto walked into the room Yugito was held. As soon as he entered, the woman was already glaring at him murderously. Her glare did nothing to scare him though. It was not even amusing to witness. Zetsu must not have told her anything when she woke up. That much was obvious. He stood by the door frame and folded his hands across his chest while looking at her, impassively. There was no mistake about it. The man that was standing in front of her was Uchiha Naruto. The Raikage disliked him very much because of his rumored power. She did not understand much about it though, because to her he was no threat as long as he did nothing against her village. So far he had done nothing to provoke the anger or wrath of her village. Looking straight at him, she could feel his power oozing through him. The look on his eyes was somewhat hypnotizing. But she refused to fall under the hypnosis. She stubbornly refused to show weakness in front of him. He was somewhat not so much scary as some people in Kiri had described him. His general appearance was indeed fearsome and his power was definitely threatening to enter her system. But it was nothing scary. Perhaps she liked the power that was leaking out of him. Perhaps he was not just showing her his scary side. Either way, she merely stared at him impassively, imitating the look her was giving her. He did not seem like he was going to say anything by the look he was giving her. She did not really know where she was and how she got here. But last thing she remembered before losing consciousness was fighting two Akatsuki freaks that just did not die no matter how hard she hit them. They were truly freaks of nature. Even when delivering killing blows, they did not die, they merely continued to fight her while the other added the misery by continuously calling her a bitch. Those two Akatsuki agents had nearly killed her. When she had lost consciousness, she thought she was done for it. Nobody knew what the Akatsuki did when they had captured you. But she was certain that whatever it was they did, it would result in her death. But here she was with Uchiha Naruto staring at her with a blank look on his face. She had been proud of her strength thinking that she could defeat the two Akatsuki members. She was a perfect Jinchuriki who could control the powers of her Biju. It was unthinkable that two immortals would defeat her as she was. She was one of the strongest in Kumo. Even with her own power without her Biju, she was at least high Junin level shinobi. She did not think that she would be defeated. But she was. And here she was. Naruto is rumored to be a Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. She had little hope that perhaps he was not going to do nasty things to her. Some men were pigs. Having a woman at their captive would surely arouse disgusting thoughts within their minds. And it did not take long for them to try to unclothe a woman so to do whatever they pleased with her. Those were the dangers of being a kunoichi, but she was a proud one and accepted all that came with the job. But that did not mean she would rejoice if that man staring at her chose to do something unthinkable to her. What do you want? Yugito finally asked after getting tired of the silence. She spoke through gritted teeth but keeping her tone down and expression calm so not to show any weakness. What do I want? Naruto repeated her question. He did not smile or anything. He took steps towards her. Each step was the sound of her heartbeat. She was starting to feel scared, afraid of her fate. She did not know what he wanted with her. He was a man and she was a woman. She was restrained and her chakra was sucked out. It would take a while for her to recover it. And her body still hurt from the fight with Akatsuki. Naruto stopped in front of her and leaned towards her. His face was just inches away from her. He still kept his expression impassive, no sign of anything. She could not figure out what was going inside his mind. She wanted to spit on his face because of how close his face was to hers. She could feel his warm breath touching her skin. He then moved towards her right ear. Why don't you tell me what I want? He said with a tone devoid of any emotion. After that he went back to face her so she could see his face. His question did nothing to comfort her. What could she say? She settled for glaring at him. What infuriated her was that he did not waver or even say a word. He simply kept his silence. She knew he was waiting for her to answer him. She was his captive, he could do whatever he wanted with her. He was in charge and he was showing it to her. She cursed inwardly and thought of wiping that infuriating blank expression off his face. Where am I? Yugito asked a different question. Naruto then moved his hand towards her face. He got hold of her chin, staring into her eyes with his hypnotic eyes. He smiled slightly. Yugito wanted to hit his face, but her hands were tied behind her. But even so, she stayed calm. Aren't you going to answer my question? Yugito intensified her glare as hard as she could. Do what you want, she said with a tone devoid of any emotion. Naruto merely kept his small smile. Fine, he said, moving his hands downwards. Yugito widened her eyes thinking he was going after her assets. Naruto lifted her shirt and placed his hand on her belly. He then pulled a white mass from her. Then the mass then transformed of a human, no, something like a white human. Naruto turned towards it. There seemed to be a silent message passed through them because White Zetsu's clone nodded to Naruto then disappeared from the room. Naruto looked at Yugito. Her hands were still bound. He moved towards to unbind them. He felt her body tense as his body touched hers, but he said nothing. He just forcibly turned her back towards him and cut off the rope binding her. He then moved away from her. Looking at her expression he spoke. You thought I was going to do something to your body, he said as if it was the most obvious thing. Yugito merely stared at him. That was what had crossed her mind. But she was not going to admit that. But she was now certain that he was not going to do something nasty to her. If he wanted to he would have done it so already without unbinding her. When he had lifted up her shirt slightly, she thought he was surely going for it. But she was relieved when he simply pulled something out of her. She did not understand what it was, but it seemed not to do any harm to her. Even so, she refused to show her emotions. You women are always thinking nasty things. No wonder bad things happen to you, he seemed to sigh as he finished speaking. You can now gather your chakra, am I right? Yugito had not felt it. But focusing, she felt it. Her chakra was gradually returning. That was it, that thing he pulled out was draining her chakra each time her system builds. That made her without much chakra to do anything. This generosity of course raised alarms. Why would he do that? If she gathered her chakra she could attempt to escape even now that she was unbound. What do you want? Yugito asked her question again. Nothing, Naruto responded. Zetsu had already placed a seal on her to cut off her connection with her Biju. She had yet to realize it. But she would soon. What were you doing outside Kumo alone? The threat of Akatsuki is known. Despite being a perfect Jinchuriki, your power is not enough to deal with those zombies without assistance. Someone strong should have been with you. Yugito ignored the comment about her power. I was on a mission, she answered flatly. Naruto seemed to think for a moment. Ah, so, it was a setup, he said. Huh. What is the coincidence that the day you leave Kumo without your team the Akatsuki happened to show up? Naruto questioned. Yugito just looked at him with confusion, but he was not going to explain. Rest for now, tomorrow or the following, you will be returned to Kumogakure. So you saved from the Akatsuki, Yugito said, finding it the only reason he would be with her. She was captured by those zombies as Naruto called them. If they were not here, and he was telling her that he would return her home, he would have dealt with them. Naruto did not respond. His eyes bored into hers as they spun. Sleep, he said. Yugito felt her consciousness leave her. Genjutsu, she realized. She cursed her weak state as darkness consumed her and she fell backwards into the bed. Naruto sighed and turned around to leave the room. Yugito could now recover well her chakra during the Sharingan forced sleep. If she can recover her chakra and heal her wounds to some extent during the night, it would be good. It would be well if her connection with Matabi was not cut off. If not, the Biju would heal her during the night. But if he had not cut off the connection, the Biju would wake her up. If that happened, he would have been forced to have a white Zetsu clone tag her so to consume her chakra so that she does not attempt to run away. But doing that would leave her unable to heal properly and recover her chakra. He wanted her to walk on her own feet when they go to Kumo. When doing that, she would not be a burden that would need to be carried all the way. Things would be easier if she was on her own feet. Since the rescue was a success, he would have to go to Kumo and then return to Konoha. Upon returning, he would have to think other things. It was best to get this little episode over and move on to other matters. What he had to do now was refresh his body. He had been dead. The body needed sufficient rest. His chakra was also acting up in the wrong way within his body. He could feel its circulation around his body. Normally, he should not be able to do so unless meditating. But he was not doing so. He had figured that by now, he should have been able to know whatever happens to his body. He hated it when something happened and he could not understand it. But it was no matter at the moment. He had been dead after all. Sighing, Naruto closed the door behind him as he took silent steps towards a room he would use. Sasuke was still resting, there was no need to visit him. What good would it do if the Uchiha was sleeping and he went there? For now it was best to allow him to recover. The following day, where are you going? Yugito heard as she was silently making her way towards the exit of the house she had been kept in. Upon waking up from her Sharingan-induced sleep, she had immediately thought of running away from the place. It was still early in the morning, still dark inside and outside. She thought that everyone would be sleeping. But guess not. She turned around and saw those eyes that had stared at her the previous day, the eyes that seemed to glow with the dark. She could not tell what his expression was like because of the darkness. But she could feel that he was neither smiling nor pleased by the situation. He seemed to blink before speaking. Is this how you thank people, woman? I saved your life from the hands of Akatsuki and told you I would return you home. Is this how you thank my hospitality? By the tone of his voice, she could tell that he was merely saying those words. Perhaps for his amusement in seeing how she would react. By the tone, she could tell that he cared not for those things. The tone was just the same as he had used the last time he spoke to her, blank. She wondered how she was going to get out of this one. Her body had not yet healed. She could not outrun a man who is said to have killed an army by himself. He also defeated the Sanbi's Jinchuriki. A Jinchuriki that was stronger than her. With her injuries and him in perfect condition, who could win that battle? Still, she felt somewhat bad with his words even though she could tell he did not care for it. He had indeed saved her from the clutches of Akatsuki, kept her safe and did not mistreat her. He did not even take an advantage of her. Her wounds had been bandaged and somewhat cleaned. He had not even bound her. Well, she was bound at the beginning, but he had unbound her to allow her to recover. That spoke much. She was not kept like a prisoner, and here she was trying to run away from the man who saved her ass. Perhaps she did not know if he was telling the truth about taking her home. Perhaps it was because she did not trust a stranger, a man who could put her under an illusion by just looking into her eyes. Even so, with those thoughts, I am returning home, she said in a firm tone. Go back to your room, she was being told like a child who had done wrong. Parents who were not strict usually do that to their misbehaving children. But in his tone there was underlying message that she could feel. But even so, Yugito kept quiet. She was not going to back down just because she was told to go back to her room. She would stand still and see what would happen. It was not like he was going to kill her after saving her. Her eyes widened when, in a matter of the blink on an eye, Naruto was right in front of her. She had not seen him move. Perhaps it was because of the darkness. But it was certain that he was extremely fast. She was no weak kunoichi. She had experienced her fair number of battles. The speed the blonde used to shorten the distance between him and her was fast. He did nothing though. He merely stared into her eyes. But she immediately looked away to avoid being caught in a genjutsu again. Do not keep me waiting. If you do, I will break both your legs and drag you to Kumogakure like that. And there will be nothing you can do or about it. From his tone, he meant it. Yugito was not going to take the chance. She would not be killed. But having her legs broken was worse, even though she would heal eventually. She was not going to take a chance with him. Silently, she stepped away from him and walked back to her room with her head held high. She was not embarrassed by being caught on the act. But even so, his mere presence close to her was enough to make her abandon her plans. There goes my silent night song, Naruto said as Yugito had disappeared. He had been enjoying the silence the night brought while he organized his thoughts until the woman tried this act. Now he could no longer do that. Well, in an hour or so, the darkness would return to the corners after being shoved there by the light. He silently made his way towards the kitchen. A few hours later, Sasuke was surprised to see Naruto inside his room. Naruto had been dead the last time he saw him. But he had been told by Zetsu that he was merely sleeping. So then he could say he was not lying but telling the truth. The blonde looked lively as always. He did not seem like Had was dead a day ago when he last saw him. Of course his mind was clouded with other things, but he was somewhat surprised and relieved to see that his fellow Uchiha was alive. You are alive, Sasuke stated looking straight at Naruto. He ignored the fact that he was bound. Yes, I am, Naruto answered. Zetsu must have assured you that I was not dead, but merely sleeping. He did, Sasuke said. Naruto was now close to him. He could feel the blonde's oppressing chakra. He normally did not feel it even when the blonde was close to him. The chakra was always silent. But now he could feel its superiority forcing his own to fall beneath it. What is wrong with you? Sasuke felt compelled to question. My chakra. Naruto asked but did not wait for Sasuke to respond. The seals that normally keep my chakra sealed are breaking because the chakra was misbehaving all night. And it also too much of a bothersome task to suppress it. I seem to have lost the ability an hour ago, he finished the last words in a thoughtful tone. Sasuke nodded. He was not going to ask why his chakra had been misbehaving. He had other matters to deal with. Yes. The events of yesterday rushed through his head and his expression darkened. Did you know? The question was asked like he would have in his old brooding days. The truth behind the Uchiha massacre? Yes, Naruto responded in a calm tone. How long have you known? The day after it happened, Naruto responded without fear of Sasuke lashing out at him. He was going to be honest about this part since Itachi had already told him the truth. Why did you not tell me the truth? Sasuke was now glaring at him darkly. It seemed like he wanted to kill him with his own eyes. If he had not been bound, he would have surely been on Naruto's face demanding answers. It was not my place to say, Naruto responded. But when has that stopped him from saying things? He had always being straightforward. Sasuke snorted knowing this. Whether it was his place or not, Naruto would have told him if he wanted. He did not tell him because he did not want to. The blonde proved him right with his next words. There was also the fact that I simply did not want to tell you and deal with this. But this way was what your brother wanted. Despite being painful, it was the best way you could awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan. And in your old days, you would have acted stupidly and ignorantly, and gotten yourself killed if you were told the truth. Why does everyone treat me like a child? Sasuke nearly yelled. That is because you acted like one. At least now you have matured, Naruto responded shortly. Now let me see those eyes you awakened. Sasuke activated his Mangekyo Sharingan but glared at Naruto. He did not smile. He merely kept his dark expression. Does Kakashi know about it? No, Naruto answered, shaking his head. The only ones in Konoha who knew were the advisors and Sarutobi. Tsunade and Jiraiya are not aware of that. How can you allow them to leave after they had done something like that? Our clan was massacred by my brother. He was forced to do it and yet the villagers called him many names. How could you stand that? Now Sasuke's voice was loud. He was barely containing his anger. Naruto was glad he had set a silencing seals. I did not particularly care for the Uchiha, Naruto responded, shocking Sasuke. They were stupid. Had they not betrayed Madara after Konoha was formed, Tobirama would have never pushed them away from Konoha, leading them to think of attempting a coup d'état. It was their own stupidity that led them to the position they had found themselves in, Naruto stated in keeping his tone as always. How can you say that? Sasuke yelled. It was unthinkable that the blonde could say something like that. He may be an uncaring person, but this was different. My parents were killed. Innocent children were murdered even though they did not do anything. And my brother was forced to carry that burden alone. That was unfortunate, Naruto said. He shook his head. You are making me talk about my childhood. And if you do anything stupid after this, I will kill you. He paused for a moment. Minato died saving Konoha and my mother died also. Protecting Konoha. I was made a Jinchuriki for the sake of the village. Minato's naive dream was for me to be seen as a hero. But I was not. Instead I was forced to live in the orphanage while on my birthdays angry mobs attacked me. Each day of my life I was forced to endure glaring eyes of pure hatred. In all that, I never knew who my parents were. And only found out later that I was the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki. So tell me Sasuke, between you and me, who deserves revenge? Sasuke was silent for some time. Kakashi had told him of Naruto's harsh childhood. The Junin would smile sadly with guilt each time they spoke about the subject. But one that had guilt the most was Jiraiya. He only saw the expression once though. The two had been talking about it while drinking sake when he overheard them. Our misery was caused because of the village. Does not that give us more reason to see the village burn down? His voice was no longer loud. It does, Naruto admitted. But my mother not only sacrificed herself for me, she also sacrificed herself for the sake of Konoha. Destroying it would not do her sacrifice any good. And besides, it is not everyone in Konoha who deserves to die. Are you saying you forgive them? Naruto raised a brow at the question. No, he said. Then why? Sasuke wanted to understand why could stand them. I cannot stand them if that is what you thinking. And I have already told you why. Have you seen me smiling at those fools? Sasuke shook his head. Konoha itself did nothing to you, so did the villagers. They showered you with love and everything you ever wanted. But I was the outcast, the disease that could not be healed. I cannot let this slide. That is fair, Naruto stated. You can do whatever you want to those who issued the order. If Danzo had not been stupid, we would have been killing him together. They are dead, Sasuke said. Kaharu and Homura are still alive. You can make them suffer all you want. I don't care, just don't get yourself into unnecessary troubles, Naruto stated with a shrug. Sasuke smiled in a sick way as he thought of ways to make those fools suffer. Naruto could tell that Sasuke was still infuriated. And it was certain that should anyone speak ill of Itachi, there would be a certain death unless someone stops him. Well, at least he had calmed him a little. He would not think of becoming a missing nin and think of destroying Konoha. As long as he has his fun with the advisors, he would tone his anger a little. Perhaps if it had been the old him, he would not have listened to him. Naruto stood up and let off the restraints. Where is Itachi's corpse? He wanted to give his brother a proper burial at the compound in Konoha. No one would stand in his way of doing that. Safe in his eyes also, Naruto responded. The eyes would be useful for Sasuke no to go blind and to gain the eternal Mangekyo. But for now, he had to stick with the Mangekyo Sharingan. He would give him Itachi's eyes later after he had gotten used to the Mangekyo Sharingan's power. Sasuke nodded. His expression, though no longer dark, it was not happy. It would take some time for the happy expression to return. Anger and hatred did not just vanish in the blink of an eye. Sasuke still felt both the former and the latter. It would take some time for him to feel that no more. What now? We head to Kumo, Naruto responded as he began to walk away from the raven-haired Uchiha. Sasuke seemed fine. Yugito could also travel, so there was no need to stay within the hideout anymore.